Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chico MMA channel. With this video, I know it may be kind of late because it is Wednesday, and this was kind of a topic around Sunday, Monday, the aftercard of UFC 283. But the reason I'm making it today is because, well, for one thing, I've been wanting to talk about it, and I just didn't get the chance to when it, was a bigger topic. But also, number two is because the topic came up again today with Jamahal Hill's response to Yuri Prohaska's call out. If you guys want to listen to that, you can.
Congratulations. I'm coming. I'm coming! But where you at, though? Where you at, though? And by the way, that's what she said. That's what she said!
Very silly call out from both of them. The whole "I'm coming" thing. I mean, that had me laughing for very very long time for no reason. It really shouldn't have been that funny, but for some, like, just see these different captions that people put underneath it, and it's like, oh my god. Yeah, that shit gets me every time. But yeah, the whole, this kind of came up again today, and I don't know. I feel like we should just talk about it because there's so many people in this conversation of who Jamahal Hill should fight next, who he should defend his belt against, for the light heavyweight title. And as you all know, Jamal won the fight against Glover Teixeira for the main event of UFC 283. Won the belt, the vacant belt. He was number 7 in the rankings at the time. Shot all the way up to being a title holder. And now it's this whole discussion of who's next, because first of all, there's a lot of guys at light heavyweight, and then obviously there's a certain teammate of Glover Teixeira, and it's just this whole thing. And I want to get into that mainly in this video. But before I do that, if we look at Jamahal Hill, right? So pretty much, I want you all to look at his arm that's holding the belt. That's the right arm. So I want you all to look at that arm, and if you look a little bit close, you can see like that arm is definitely not the same size as his left arm. If you're thinking that, you would be correct, because if you look here, it's the same arm that Leon Edwards has for his title picture. Let me show you. Jamahal Hill, Leon. Jamahal Hill, Leon, down to the veins, the structure of the bicep, the muscle and the tricep. Everything about it is similar. But what also probably surprised you is the fact that this isn't Leon. It's not Jamahal Hill's arm, but it's also not Leon Edwards' arm. This is Kamaru Usman's arm from when he held the belt. That's Usman's arm, Kamaru Usman's arm. And if you don't believe me, you could probably search up an old photo of Usman holding the belt. You can't really find it online. It's difficult to do that because once you lose your title, the UFC website gets rid of the picture of you with the title, with like holding the belt, and then it's hard to find that photo again. So I don't have it pulled up, but trust me, like when I say, you could probably find it on Twitter, because that's how I find it. No, I found it on Instagram, and then I went to the Twitter page, and then it was like real. So you can look it up for yourself if you want, but that's definitely something that's interesting there. That's a whole another topic of why that happens and how that happens. That's not what this video is about. This video is about Jamahal Hill and who he's going to defend his title against next. And if we want to look at that, there's actually two things we need to look at. With the circumstances of this whole Jamahal Hill thing and how he won the belt, who he won it against, we have to look at light heavyweight and middleweight for this one. I know it's confusing, but some of you know what I mean. Some of you, if you don't, that's okay too, because it's confusing. It's just the state we're in the UFC right now. It's very, very interesting. Let's look at first of all, the top 3 guys, the top 3 really like contenders to this belt, just in total, right? In general. First, obviously, has to be Yuri Prohaska. Yuri Prohaska was the guy who held the title before Jamahal Hill. He submitted Glover Teixeira. UFC 275 in the last round, won the vacant title. It wasn't the vacant title. He won the title against Glover Teixeira, who was holding the belt at that point. Won it, was meant to defend it against Teixeira in a rematch in December, UFC 282. Pulled out due to a gruesome shoulder injury and is now recovering. Had to get surgery. It was very, very bad injury according to Dana White in the UFC and his team. And is now looking for whenever he can fight for the belt as soon as possible. The next guy, the guy I'd have number 2, or no, not this is no particular order, right? So I have Magomed Ankalaev. Now the thing with Magomed Ankalaev is obviously he drew the fight with Jan Blachowicz, right? That's common knowledge. And it was very controversial. A lot of people, disagreed with the whole result, whatever. I thought it was the right result for who won the rounds and how the rounds were won. It makes sense a draw. A lot of people don't realize it, but a draw was likely. A draw was very, very possible for this fight. More possible than most other fights we've seen in the last few months. And a draw is what happened. It was a split draw, which means one judge gave it to Blachowicz, one judge gave it to Ankalaev, and one judge gave it a draw. So that's just how close of a fight it was. So the thing is with this fight is, okay, you could have Jan Blachowicz in that conversation as well, right? But the thing is the court of public opinion has already kind of agreed that Magomed Ankalaev should have won the fight instead. So because of that, the UFC rankings actually, Jan Blachowicz was above Magomed at the start, but Ankalaev is now above Jan. And Jan Blachowicz now losing his last 2 title fights. Or not even losing, just not winning, It's unlikely that he'll get to fight for that title again anytime soon. I don't know who else he needs to beat. The only guy he hasn't fought in the top 5 right now, I guess Glover Teixeira doesn't really count. But if we are, the only guy he hasn't fought in the top 5 right now is Yuri Prochazka. He's fought everybody else. He lost to Glover, beat Rakic, tied Magomed. It's just kind of like 1-1-1 against the top 5. Is pretty interesting there. Very weird spot that we're in right now. But if anybody were to fight for that title next at light heavyweight, it's Yuri or Magomed. But there's one more guy, and this is no surprise. A lot of people are talking about him. His name is on a lot of people's minds right now. Everybody seems to, want to see this fight. It's Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is the middleweight champion right now. Beat Israel Adesanya in that the UFC 281 main event. Won the title knockout in the last round. It was in the 5th round, and yeah, this propelled him to pretty much superstardom with that fight. And the thing with Pereira is he's been training with Glover Teixeira for the past couple months, maybe a few years. I don't know how long exactly, but they've been training together for some time. They're good friends. You always see them training together or hanging out together. Whether it's publicly or it's private, they're usually together. They spent Thanksgiving together. That's how close they are. So for Jamahal Hill to go out and brutalize Glover Teixeira in the way that he did, for Teixeira to then retire, for a guy like Alex Pereira, who's one of Glover Teixeira's, likely one of his best friends right now, how do you think this makes him feel? He was there. He was in the arena. He was in the octagon. Man, he was there. He was there to shake Jamahal Hill's hand and congratulate him. So what's stopping this fight from happening? They've got the storyline straight. They've got 2 stone cold killers, right? 2 powerful punchers, very skilled strikers, and very big guys as well. Everybody likes seeing 2 big guys fight. This is that fight to make. Another thing about this one is Alex Pereira is pretty much a light heavyweight. He can cut to middleweight for sure, but this guy is as light heavyweight gets, is Alex Pereira. I think he just decides to fight a middleweight to to, just to like annoy Adesanya. That's the whole like meme right now. But this fight is very possible to make happen. The UFC could easily say Yuri's injured, Magomed tied his last fight, so Alex Pereira is the only one left. The UFC could easily say that. I think if they wanted to go that route with Pereira in like June, July, August, maybe even May, they could definitely go that route and easily convince the media that Alex Pereira is the fight to make. If and only if, because here's the thing, Pereira is the middleweight champion. He has an obligation to defend that belt. Who does he have the obligation to defend it against? Well, there's two guys in line. It's not even one guy. There's two guys. One of them is obviously Adesanya, who he took the belt from. It was like a last few minutes resort knockout. He was losing the fight up to that point. So for a guy like Israel Adesanya, who was a very, very dominant champion, had multiple title defenses against some of the top best guys at middleweight. Marvin Vettori, Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero, Jared Cannonier. Who am I missing? I don't know if I'm missing anyone from that. But super, super dominant title reign just throughout. And Paulo Costa as well. And for him to lose in like the last few minutes of a fight he was winning against Alex Pereira. I mean, we've seen this happen already kind of with Leon Edwards versus Usman. Usman's getting the immediate rematch because, obviously he had that whole hand injury. I made a video about it, but it seems that he'll be able to recover in time and come back for that fight. It's similar circumstances. So what's going to happen here is, and Pereira has said this too. He said if Adesanya, for whatever reason, doesn't take the rematch, then he'd go for Robert Whittaker. So Adesanya being the number one contender at middleweight, Robert Whittaker is number 2. Robert Whittaker is pretty much like, in terms of resumes and records, he is Israel Adesanya, except has lost to Israel Adesanya. That doesn't make any sense. That was a weird analogy to make. What I mean by that is this guy has beaten everybody under the sun. Look, if we go to it doesn't even stop here. Like, okay, this is a bit far. This is like 2015. We're gonna look more. We'll look more when he like won the title. He wins the title, beats Yoel Romero, then he loses it to Israel Adesanya. Okay, that's a pretty tough loss. He got knocked out in the second round. Beats Darren Till, who at the time was ranked very high. Beats Cannonier, who right now is ranked number 3. Beats Gastelum, who I don't know how high he was ranked at that point, honestly. Then he rematches Adesanya for the title. A lot of people argue he won that fight, but he ended up losing a decision. When it comes to the judges, you never really know what they're gonna say. Especially with that whole Patty shit, and you just never know. So a lot of people think Whittaker won that fight. So what does he go on to do after that? Goes on to beat current number 4 ranked Marvin Vettori. So this guy, Robert Whittaker, he's just beaten everybody that isn't named Israel Adesanya. I mean, he is so good and has beaten so many big names and high-level fighters that he's on the top 15 pound for pound list. He's number 14 right now. That's how good this guy is. So that's how much of a front runner he is for that title shot. He's a former champion. A lot of people argue that he should be the champion right now. So easily he should be next, and he's ready to go, man. He wants to fight. He said it after his fight got canceled in February against Paulo Costa. He wants to fight in March and April. Whatever they can give him, he'll take it. I don't know if Pereira will fight at that time, but all I'm saying is if Robert Whittaker doesn't take another contender fight in that time, Pereira's going to have to defend his title against Robert Whittaker, and then the Jamahal Hill fight will not happen. And then they'll probably lose that opportunity if he maybe loses or whatever it may be. But let's say Robert Whittaker sticks to his guns, decides to fight, because he's hungry enough to the point where like he has to fight. He fights someone to fight, at middleweight. Who would he fight? I guess he could fight Brunson. No, Brunson's scheduled. he could fight. Sean Strickland's had too many fights. Delidze scheduled. Costa is Costa. Could probably rematch Cannonier. Nah. There's just not a lot of fights to make there, you know. Very likely this one gets made. Very likely this one gets made too. But you know what? Let's say Robert Whittaker takes a fight at middleweight. You know, kind of like how let's say Gilbert Burns fighting Neil Magny, like number 5 versus number 12 or number 13 at the time, I think. Let's say Robert Whittaker decides to fight. Who's available? Who will be available at that time? Let's say he fights Nasruddin Imavov. Or no, because he's coming off of a loss. Let's say he fights Sean Strickland. Or Jack Hermansson's coming off a loss too. We can't. Everybody else is scheduled besides Darren Till. And that fight doesn't make sense. Let's say he decides to fight Sean Strickland, for example. Then let's say Israel Adesanya decides he don't want the rematch right away. Pereira versus Jamahal is the fight to make. Now, let's say, because the scenario I just listed there with Adesanya and Whittaker, that's very unlikely to happen. So let's say, you know, Adesanya is ready to compete. And if he's not, then Whittaker is ready to compete. Either one of those is very, very likely to happen, you know, in June, July, and even before that for Robert Whittaker, maybe. Then Alex Pereira is going to have to defend his title. What happens then is Jamahal Hill has to defend his title against a light heavyweight contender. So with this thing most likely to happen, who's going to be next in line to fight? Is it going to be Yuri or Magomed? Because this is most likely what's going to happen. Is it Yuri or Magomed? Well, I talked about Yuri has a very gruesome shoulder injury. You know, had to get surgery and everything. That was around a month ago. So, or no, like a month and a half ago. So, realistically, he shouldn't be coming back to competition anytime soon, right? This is Yuri 5 days ago. It's hard to even tell which shoulder got injured in this photo. I mean, I guess it could be because the photo's kind of like not the best quality, but you know, it's what I mean by it's difficult to tell which shoulder's injured means that like it's clear that the shoulder is recovering and is becoming likely closer to what it was before, which is what recovery means. I don't know why I said that. I'm pretty sure it was the right shoulder. You know, that's why there's like a big bump in that middle there. But he's gripping the bike and he's pushing his arms up on that bike. I mean, with a gruesome shoulder injury, that's not going to be the easiest to do. It's gonna hurt, and it's best not to do that. But it looks like he's taking this recovery very serious. And if his body does well enough, which Yuri Prohaska is a very, very healthy guy. I mean, that's no secret. This guy probably has the right, you know, just lifestyle in terms of everything. You know, he trains, he keeps himself healthy, he don't catch too many like sicknesses, he eats well, I'm pretty sure he sleeps well, he meditates, he keeps that mental health in check, he keeps his physical health in check as well. This guy's likely gonna recover quickly, is what I'm trying to say. He's gonna recover in time. So what that brings me to is it would really just depend on timing. When does Yuri Prohaska want to, not even when he recovers, when does he reschedule this fight? Because Yuri Prohaska's a dog. He'll take this fight with one arm. He'll do it. So he could schedule it 2 months before and say like, oh yeah, my injury will heal in a month. Maybe, you know, I'll have enough time to train properly for that fight with Jamahal Hill. Let's say that doesn't happen. There's a lot of circumstances, a lot of, you know, just different things of how certain things could play out. And it all depends. It would all depend on circumstances, but mainly depends on timing, right? Because let's say Yuri, it's not even about being ready to fight necessarily. It's about the scheduling. When are you going to call the UFC and say, I'm going to fight? When does the UFC call you and say, you're going to fight? You know, it depends on that. It just depends on the scheduling and what is said on paper, what is given to the fans as well. When Marcel posts out, Yuri Prohaska will take on Jamal Hill for the title, you know, or ESPN or whatever it may be. Whoever you look at for like your fight announcements, I'd look at Marcel because he's really good when it comes to announcing fights. And it would all just depend on that, really. But that itself depends on Yuri's shoulder and the timing and everything like that. So everything comes down to the shoulder, is what I'm trying to say. If the shoulder decides, I'm not ready, the timing isn't right, it's gonna tell Yuri, oh yeah, I need more time. What happens then is Magomed challenges Jamal Hill. In the meantime, Jamal Hill fixes his, the cut under his eye, the black eye, that heals up. He'll come back to the gym like in a week, 2 weeks. He'll be back to training. Magomed, I bet, is already training. He might even be recovering his own leg injury. It's unclear. He might be. That's just a little conspiracy for me. So I don't know. These guys are both pretty busted up right now. It would depend on when Jamal Hill clears his, black. Nah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. What am I talking about? It would depend on which one of these guys. Yuri Prohaska's injury is likely going to take way longer. Magomed, he's already had a long time to heal up, and it wasn't as severe either. He just caught a few leg kicks pretty badly. He should be maybe get some soreness in that area, anywhere near that, but he should be better now. And I think he'll be ready to come back May, June, July. Maybe August the latest. So who do I think Jamal Hill would have the best, most hyped up, just most perfect fight against? Easily Alex Pereira, because Yuri's injured and because of the circumstances, the backstory. Alex Pereira is just the most fun fight. That's an incredible fight, especially, they're putting on double champ fights. They're putting one on in 2-3 weeks. It's the 30-year anniversary for the UFC. It's the 30th year round. They're putting on the best fights that they can right now. If you want to put on the best fights, dog, this is the best fight. That's pay-per-view. That's pay-per-view, man. And what do I think is going to happen? I think it's just going to be Magomed. I think that's just the fight that would make the most sense in terms of the future, what is most likely going to happen. I want this one, but we might just have to settle for this one. And a lot of people want this one too. I think that'd be pretty cool, but it just depends on that shoulder. That's always a factor in, is that shoulder. And this video is long enough. I've gone into a lot of things, a lot of circumstances, a lot of possible outlooks, possible outcomes is what I mean. So who does Jamal Hill fight next? I'm making the prediction right now. Jamal Hill will fight Magomed Ankalaev next. I predict it will be, it'll have to be, fuck it. I'll say June. My mind is telling me May. It's just, this fight is very it gives me a May feel. I feel like it'd be end of May. But I'll say early June. Kind of like UFC 275 was early June with the light heavyweight fight there. That's my prediction. Jamal Hill will fight Magomed Ankalaev in June. Actually, Yuri Prohaska might be fully healed up by that time. Maybe there'll be an interim title fight. There's just so many possible outcomes. On my prediction now, I think he'll fight Magomed Ankalaev in early June, maybe middle June. But damn, UFC, you cannot miss this. I know it'll also all depend on how Adesanya or Whitaker. But listen, the UFC cannot sleep on this opportunity. If both of these guys don't want to fight, make this fight happen. That's the fucking fight to make. If everything falls into place, if all the puzzle pieces fit in together, Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira. If it doesn't, then make the fight against Magomed, because we want Yuri Prohaska to fight when he's at his best, when he's fully healed, and then as a full training camp after he's fully healed. So the best scenario, the best outcome possible, obviously, is Pereira Jamal. But the best outcome thinking, you know, more, I guess, with like what's more likely to happen, my prediction is Jamahal versus Magomed Ankalaev in early June.